chance for people to join in. And I'm just delighted to have you all here. And a couple of years ago, we did something like this with Healing from Harvey. Now, I knew something about hurricanes and what you do before, during, and after to cope and to work, because I've been in a hospital where we were sheltered in place. We lost water, we lost power, and we handled it beautifully. But I have to tell you, a pandemic is a whole different story. None of us have lived through this, so it's very different. And I think everybody's interested in what we should be doing. And as I got prepared for this, every time I thought I had this probably about where I wanted it to be, I would get another invitation to join a continuing education program. So I would get on that to see if there was anything new. Even this morning, I had a new one, and I thought, much of it is saying the same things just in different ways. So I kind of think I don't have a whole lot new that you're going to hear as new, but I think there's value in us sharing ideas and being reminded and reinforced in what we do to take care of ourselves and then our students. So this is kind of the agenda. I'll talk a little bit about some of the symptoms and indicators of stress, and we'll also talk about that for students. Especially, we'll look at self-care and resources for both students and for ourselves, and really save time at the end for questions and discussion. Okay, so, this idea of self-quarantine and social distancing, it's just a new experience for all of us. And despite the difficulties, there are going to be opportunities for us to create positive changes going forward, even after this has hopefully gone. And I think of that every day as I learn something new about WebEx or better ways to use my resources. And I think this is going to help me later. And I think having that kind of future thinking is one of the first things I do to help my own self cope. But through it all, we have to pace ourselves. This is a marathon, and probably even longer than that. It's like we don't know where the finish line is going to be. It's not a sprint. We will live in the shadow of this very long time. And I'm telling you things that you know, in the sense of there are still lots of health and behavior changes we haven't even identified or determined. We can only guess what kind of economic changes and business changes they're going to be. And most of all, we don't know how this will roll out and how long it's going to keep on rolling. And that said, I put most of my energies, and I encourage you to do the same, into the present aspects. What can I do here and now? It's not to ignore the future, but I can't focus a whole lot on what's going to happen in August because I have no idea. And I have a real appreciation for those who are working on the various models and plans, but that's not my work. And most of you who are tuned in today, that's not your work either. So let's look at what we can do. So for us, this is, again, saying what you know. Our normal routines are gone, and that's an understatement. And there are a lot of time pressures and so much flexing and adjusting to meet the ever-changing demands. I've been talking with small groups of students lately as they're working on projects, and I've been amazed at the work they've done. Exceeded my expectations for this point in the project, but they're using that. They find a little time to work it in because they've realized they might not have time next week. Something else may change. We have all lost lots of resources of all sorts and other types of loss too. In our cohort, we had one student who lost her father to COVID. So, we don't know who out there that we're talking to on the screen has experienced what kind of losses or the threat of losses yet to come. Some of us are a little bit guilty. I know I kind of do. My husband and I both have jobs that we can work at from home. We don't have to juggle homeschooling with kids, all of those sorts of things. We have a pretty good supply of toilet paper. So I just think, oh my gosh, there are so many people in overwhelmingly demanding circumstances. So that's also one of those stressors. And this whole situation, past traumas for people, and that's an important thing too that we have to think about. I know a nurse who worked within a hospital where they were dealing with Ebola virus. And so this has been really kind of a re-traumatizing experience. I actually have a friend who grew up in Germany as a very young child during World War II. For her, it works well because what she was saying is we never knew where we would get food. We never knew what we would lose. We didn't have power. We couldn't go outside because a bomb might fall on our head. But all of that, from those experiences, what she gained is knowing she can live through anything. And she will be quick to remind, by the way, no one died from lack of toilet paper. So, so many of us with our different backgrounds, all kinds of things come up with this. So we have stressors from different, kind of the recipe for success in handling all this has to do with first recognizing it, responding to it, and coping with it using adaptive coping. And that's where we can focus. Recognizing our own needs and is something that some of us are always that good at because we're good problem solvers as faculty. We're always juggling multiple problems, some little, some big, and we may put our own on the back burner. Self-reliance has been so valued in our culture, but right now we really need to be able to talk about and accept help sometimes. I notice the first thing that we usually ask each other when we see people on WebEx, how are you doing? And the response is usually really pretty good, or I'm fine. And it's okay to say, well, this is a crummy day because we're all having up and all having downs. And putting words to that can be just very much a relief. So the ability to talk about our concerns and connect with others over these shared experiences is strongly associated with our being able to be healthy. Now the challenge is, how do we connect? Something like this is great. I know that we can't mandate that everybody turn their cameras on, but it is fun to see those nodding heads or the thumbs up or whatever. It feels better. I don't care if you have a basket of dirty laundry behind you or a cat runs across your desktop. I don't care if you have a toddler that comes in the room. I just want to connect. And I know most of you probably feel that way too. Sometimes just sharing these experiences more than solving anything is helpful. I shared with Kelly yesterday, my birthday was a week or so ago, and I was very surprised. A couple that we're friends with rang our doorbell. Then they ran out into the yard so they would be plenty distance away. And they serenaded me with happy birthday, got in their car, and drove off. That has been amazing. That memory is so heartwarming. And just little things like that can so matter because I know they had to drive 20 to get here and 20 minutes back for that 30-minute or 30-second song. Those ways to connect matter. So, you may be walking outside more. I love the Chalk the Walk initiatives that are around. I know that it keeps kids busy and it's very cheery. My daughter and her two preschoolers were very proud of the half mile of chalking that they did in their neighborhood. And it's like just fun, inspirational surprise messages that crop up. Out on one of my walks, I saw this down the street. This little 7-year-old is running her own community pantry. She stays out there, I don't know how long, encouraging people to bring by anything that they don't need. And she's quick to say, here, have a can of pork and beans, and you don't have to pay. And it's like, how good is that? So when we're thinking about our stresses, we can find things that bring us joy. And if we find something simple that brings us joy, do it more. There is truly the physiology of stress, and I'm not going to go into great detail, but we know it's vital for our survival that we have that fight or flight. And whenever we're in those distressed modes, cortisol is released. And with that comes the impact of that cortisol. It interferes with our thinking, our ability to make decisions, and we get forgetful. It also has an increase in things like our heart rate and other anxiety like symptoms. Our immune system becomes impaired. So, this is critical right now that we really do take care of ourselves to make us less susceptible to COVID. Fatigue and changes in appetite, sleep disturbances are also responses, and irritability. I don't know if any of you have someone in your household that you may notice a little bit harder to live with than you'd like. And it's, some days it's harder than others to even get up out of bed and find the energy to put one foot in front of the other. And the longer these stressors continue, the longer the physical response and the longer our recovery time. So anything we do to mitigate it will be helpful to us in the short run as well as the long run. So I believe self-compassion right now is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And whatever you do that's adaptive for self-compassion, do it more than you're doing now. We just can't get enough. And before we really got started, I was listening to Yvonne Serna talk about some of the things she's doing. And I love that she has some ways, and I'll let her talk about those later. But some of the common coping strategies that aren't effective over time, like, taking a few drinks, sounds like an appealing thing at times, but in the long run, not so much. You want to limit that. It's a lot of people are complaining about the fact that they're overeating or stress eating. And it's hard being away from family and friends and other activities that we liked. I mean, I found it interesting when they were talking about how necessary things like golf courses are. And I have some people that's very true. Denial can work against us, or ignoring our own needs. Some of us use work as a great way to structure, and it gives us something to do to avoid thinking about other things. So a balance of using work is appropriate. So we want to be careful. And again, it's like control right now is kind of an illusion. So we just have to stay pretty flexible, even though it is nice to control at least, what flavor of Jello I make. Anything matters at this point. Other self-care examples, we really want to establish them. Because of the things that we might be doing, like stress eating, exercise is enormously powerful right now. And so keeping ourselves active is so important. And that exercise helps clean out the cortisol that's built up from the stress. And it will help us think more clearly. We need more, not less, relaxation and downtime. I know people are out there that look at those of us who are working from home and thinking, oh, you got it made. Well, we don't. We're probably working more now than when we went into the office. And we need to take time for healthy eating. I know a lot of people are cooking more at home since restaurants aren't available. And so when we are doing that, we want to think about how to do that in a way that's healthy. And the practical problem of eating the elephant one bite at a time. What am I going to do today that will be a good thing? And it's easy to get real judgmental. I don't like it when I go to HEB and I'm all masked up and somebody else isn't. They have to respond time. And the best thing I can do is stay away from them. And we want to think helping others, just like the little girl with her community pantry. Altruism can be a real source of positive feelings, even if it's something that's little, as long as it's something that fits within our current status of being essentially homebound and quarantined. I don't know, does this look familiar to anybody? I just think, um, you know, in our college, we've had some WebEx meetings time, and it's been helpful to see that expanded Brady Bunch screen with all the squares. And we like to see each other. And, really, I don't care if your roots are growing out. I don't care what you're wearing. I just want to see you. And I also recognize not everybody's comfortable with that. And so you have to be non-judgmental and allow that some people are just going to have their initials or a picture up there. And the same when we're interacting with students. I find it very helpful because right now I'm meeting with small groups about projects that they're doing. And it's just been much easier and much more normal to be able to see them during the discussion. But I have to remember, I don't know where they're at. They may be sitting out in their car to get privacy, and they may have other circumstances. So I'm trying to be respectful of that. But for us, it actually does feel good to take a shower and comb our hair and put on, and like Kelly and I were talking earlier, she was saying today is the first day in maybe weeks that she's worn jewelry. And I'm going, I know, I found earrings. And so it kind of is good to do those things. Retail shops have noticed an increased online business and demand for tops and shirts. And we know from some of the research that have been done in high schools that when the students dress more neatly or nicer, some in uniforms, they perform better academically. I suspect for us, some of that translates as well. So I try not to get too comfy in my pajamas. Now, stress and anxiety are physical. So when we experience that, we want to take charge of our physical state. As I mentioned, when we exercise or move around physically, it will help get rid of some of that excess cortisol. The other thing is notice what you need to notice about yourself. If you're sitting there and you're feeling hot, go cool off. And that may be as simple as running your hands under cool water, or splashing some cold water on your face. If you're feeling a little chilly, not from a fever, drink a cup of hot tea or pull on a cozy sweater that makes you feel good. If you're sitting, stand up and walk around a little bit. And we all need to keep moving because we're probably sitting too much in front of this screen. And I know I miss my standing desk. When you find yourself making silly mistakes or forgetting something, that's a real clue to you. Take a break from those complex thought demanding things and do something more task oriented. Maybe you're planning a supper tonight with a salad. Clean the vegetables now. But whatever things like that, those tasks, do it mindfully. Mindfulness is a skill, and like any other skill, the more you practice it, the better you're going to get. So, no time like this COVID present to get really masterful at mindfulness. And, one of the things to remember is early in the morning or later in the evening is one of the times when anxiety and distress tends to flare. This is a great time then to, again, take a break and, bring out that cool water or a glass of tea because in all of this that you're staying hydrated. And, this is one of those takeaway messages. You've probably done this and hopefully you have. And if you haven't, limit your exposure to the news. I can't state that or stress that enough. It can be very compelling to turn it on the first thing in the morning when I take my lunch break to see what's happening, and then again in the evening. Really, from time to time during the day, has changed, and it's important to stay updated, but to limit that as well. Figure out that one time or so that gives you your fill of that, so that you're not focused on it so much. Limiting screen time altogether right now is particularly challenging, but do take those breaks. And especially if you want to get good sleep at night, you want to really limit before time. The better we do these routines, the better we're going to rest, and we need that rest to keep our immune system strong. So do stick to those routines. Bedtime doesn't have to be strict, but kind of regular going to bed and getting up times each day. And avoiding caffeine a couple of hours before sleep. Avoid exercise, avoid screen time. All of those things are disruptive to our sleep. And as much as people like to think that glass of wine before bedtime helps, in the long run, it backfires. It disrupts the overall sleep cycle. So If you'd like that glass of wine, have it earlier in the evening with dinner and give your body a chance to kind of filter it out. Um, all of these things are important for fostering sleep, and that's especially hard, I recognize, for people who have kids at home that they're working with, because you may be saving some of your work for at night when they're quieted down. So you have to really balance that. As hokey as this is going to sound, I'm going to ask you to actually practice some mindfulness with me for a minute. So put both feet on the floor, sit up straight in your chair, and to very slowly in through your nose, take a deep breath in, and as you do, bring your arms up to like shoulder height. Hold, and then very slowly to a count of about 4, lower while you let that breath out through your mouth. If you feel comfortable, close your eyes doing that, and really notice your shoulders and let them relax, because we get such a buildup in our shoulders and neck and during this time. And again, it's a good time to just do some gentle head rolls around one direction and then the other. This is something like we almost need timers built in to take regular breaks to do this, so that at the end of the day, we aren't feeling all tied up in a knot. The average person can stay truly mindful for about 3 seconds. And that doesn't sound like much, but mindfulness is being truly present in the moment, using your senses, thinking internally as well as what's right around me. What am I hearing? What do I see? What do I feel as far as to the touch? And so we can do a lot of things mindfully. For instance, when you wash your hands, and we're all washing our hands more, do it mindfully. And it's like right now I have some hand sanitizer. Mostly I wash my hands with soap and water in the house. But the idea of, we can still have the friction that we need with kind of rubbing hard, but really feeling it, smelling it, going between the fingers and the fingernails, really thinking about what we're doing and nothing else, just focusing on that. You'll be surprised. It's a different experience. So whether you do that with washing your hands, brushing your teeth, taking those deep breaths, it's important. Your circumstances won't change, but you feel a little more centered. I admire people who are very good at meditating or who like yoga. Those are wonderful, or other types of fitness exercises. And you have one website here that addresses mindfulness. There's also a resource sheet that 2 of my psych nurse practitioner friends put together that will be available for you. And you find the one that you like and kind of bookmark it and work that into your day. Even something as simple as, here's just a piece of peppermint. Don't just open it and pop it in your mouth, but can you hear the paper crackle as you open it? And then when you do, really taste it. Feel the feel of it in your mouth. Those kinds of things will be helpful. And it helps us slow down for just a minute. And we so need that for building our resilience and reinforcement right now. Many people will find their spiritual life can be of great value right now. I was talking to students and asked them for examples of what they've been doing to cope during this unprecedented time. And I guess I was thinking that they would be a lot more creative than I am, but not so much. We're all in the same boat. They were listening to music, walking their dog, driving around, those kinds of things that hopefully we're trying out too. One student, though, and she did make us all laugh, she finally got out of her apartment to take a walk, and she nearly got bitten by a dog that was also out, and that was bad. So, it's like just looking for those things, so that the way she told it was humorous, and finding humor right now is also important, because we know laughter helps our immune system as well. Well, let's switch a minute to the students that we're seeing in any given time. Before COVID, we knew that about 25 to 30% of students on any given day have so much stress that it interferes with their ability to function. So imagine with COVID, they're probably at 100% or more. And when you think about, some of them are facing radical financial challenges, and changes in their living circumstances. So imagine what it's like for them. And I do have to say, I reached out to one student that I was meeting with on Zoom. She kept looking down and she looked puzzled. And when I asked her what was going on, because she looked like she had a question, she just laughed. She said, "No, I'm trying to juggle my computer screen and take notes on my phone." So it helps us when we notice to reach out. But, we're used to seeing things with our students like change in their work, procrastination, requests for special consideration, tardiness, disruptive behavior in the class, those kinds of things. We have to look in different ways now to see, because we may not be WebExing with them, or we may not be able to see them because they don't have the camera on. We have to pick up in different ways. And, one of the things I do is check in the Blackboard to see when was the last time the students accessed. And with one student who hadn't accessed it for over a week, I reached out and just wanted to check because he hadn't accessed it. Did he have questions? I was amazed at how appreciative he was, and he explained he hadn't been feeling well, but COVID, and he was back on track again. Our students really do appreciate when we notice them, and so now we have to find different ways, because things like this, their appearance, their speech, those kinds of things we're not seeing right now in many instances. So we have to be incredibly attuned to more subtle changes. And when you're concerned about a student, don't delay. Please do connect with them directly with your concerns. And again, it's a challenge to arrange a time to talk with them. If you aren't real comfortable with that, you might want to talk to your supervisor. And what I will also want to really emphasize here is that the University Counseling Center is open for business. And I know Claudia is on today, so later when we have question and answer time, she can speak even more to this, but they can coach us. They can meet with the student by phone. They also have, I'm going to call it telehealth services, and we will talk more about what they can provide. But when we talk to them, just describe the objective concern and let them know that you are concerned. It goes a long way. Listen and volunteer personal information, that's fine, but we're not trying to pry or get too personal. There are boundaries about that, and we certainly can't promise confidentiality depending on what they're sharing. We may have to access more help or support if there's true threats involved. So we're not there to solve their problem. We may help them certainly with academic ones, but we want to emphasize that things can get better and that realistically there is hope and help available. So we want to let them know that it's, in this time especially, lots of people every year seek help through the counseling center, but now more than ever, and these are available still. If you go to the University Counseling Center website, you'll see something like this posted there. They want to list their phone number during hours, the after-hour crisis line that's there. This is a very helpful resource. I really think it's very cool. I've actually talked over the past to a couple of students who've used this. It's a self-help app, and they find it very kind of fun. And so I would encourage students who are not in enormous distress, but still feeling the stress of it all, to take advantage of this as a resource. Also, in addition to the center being open for business, don't forget we also have eye care, and in a pinch, even our local university police department. All of this information is on the University Counseling Center's website, so kind of have that bookmarked. They still provide trainings as well. If you normally would get the QPR training for suicide prevention in person, you can now get it on WebEx if that's appropriate for groups of 10 or more. This can be, maybe you are an advisor for a student group, or your class would be appropriate for. For individual students, they can still access At Risk, which is kind of an avatar gaming type platform that will help students know how to reach out to their fellow students. And we always know students know better than we do about their fellow students in distress, and we want to give them the tools to work with. But don't forget about us. You know, we do have, through our HR department, an employee assistance program. I also want to make mention of the fact that through Austin, there's now new resources offered for COVID-19 related mental health issues. So this is a 24/7 number. I'm not going to be such a Pollyanna to believe that we have suddenly grown lots more mental health resources in the state of Texas, but at least it's an attempt. And when I start thinking ahead of what good may come out of this, we will find we've known for a long time we have an enormous shortage of mental health services. This may actually put it in a spotlight where we can grow to get financing to actually have services to meet our needs. So I'm optimistic that that may be one of the good outcomes. So my fingers are crossed. In the meantime, this is a good hotline. NAMI, Alliance for Mental Illness, also has an enormous array of support available. Now, what would you do if you could really see COVID in the air? This was a pretty scary picture to me and I think this is kind of how I feel when I go to my occasional trips to HEB. I think this is exactly what it's like. So I keep practicing my social distancing. Like any skill, the more you practice, the better you get at it. I have a variety of masks, and I certainly am washing my hands a lot. And I would imagine by now, pretty much everybody tuning in is doing the same. And who knows what it's going to look like as we unfold further, but I think we're going to get real good at this. When I started preparing for this, this is a little reading I found, and even now I would change it some, but someday we will look back on this time and it will forever remind us never take the little things for granted. It will remind us to hug with all our hearts, and we may get really good at virtual hugs, to pause and appreciate holding someone's hand, and we probably will run and wash our hands after that, and live in the moment because we are surrounded by others, and that at the end of the day is what matters so much. Even if those others are 6 feet away or a Zoom away, we still really need to keep focused on those connections.